Hi, I'm Meli, and today I wanted to answer a question that came from one of our members of our community. And I'm sure you're going to relate to this one because I sure did. And the question is, I have my little notes here to guide me. The question, how to feel peaceful when others act in ways we can't understand or explain because we find them harmful or simply not how we would choose to act if we were in the same situation. For instance, during the current pandemic, how to be less judgmental with ourselves and with others. And first, I want to thank you for submitting this question and bringing to light this important topic and for sharing with us. And second, but most importantly, I want to commend you for having such a kind and big heart because I can see that you are aware that being judgmental doesn't benefit you or anyone. And the fact that you want to improve this within you just shows how big of a heart you have. So thank you for that. And I think that the greatest tool to just be less judgmental and come back to that inner peace, right? That peace within is to practice loving kindness and compassion towards the other person, but also towards ourselves when we feel these feelings that we don't want to have, right? And we are all judgmental at times, right? I just want to acknowledge that nobody's perfect, but it is important to become aware when we are being judgmental to stop it and then kind of just let it go. Because ultimately, when we're judgmental, we make ourselves suffer, and potentially we could also harm or make the other person suffer depending on how we react, right? And one thing is what happens or how the other person acts. And then another thing is how we react to that thing that happened. And if we choose to react in the most loving, kind, possible way, then we can remain with peace and calm in our hearts. And I know it's not always easy, but seeing every moment or each instance in where you do become judgmental, you can just kind of see it as an opportunity to practice loving kindness and compassion towards that person and towards yourself, and to kind of strengthen these mindfulness muscles, right? Because the more we practice and the more we use them, the more it's going to be easier to implement them into our lives. And one thing that's coming up for me as a question is like, how can we practice loving kindness when we don't understand the way that others act, right? That was part of the question. When we don't understand why they're acting the way that they're acting, and even more so when their actions may be causing harm for others, right? That might make it even more difficult for us. But I want to bring to mind something that we all already know, and that is that we don't have control over how other people think, speak, and or act, right? The only thing we have control over is ourselves, our internal world, and we have a choice to just become aware of the situation, become aware that we're being judgmental, understand that we don't agree perhaps with this other person, but from there, be able to extend loving kindness to that person regardless, because we don't know their history, we don't know what's going on with them in that moment, we don't know why they're acting the way they're acting. And we just have to acknowledge too that we all make mistakes, right? Sometimes, and we all have significantly different viewpoints as well and ideas on certain things. And you can just kind of take a look as an example of like, okay, people that only look at certain news channels, or people who grew up in a totally different culture, the information that they're being fed, the information that they're receiving, who surrounds them, what they're learning, what they've learned in the past, what was their life like, what beliefs do they hold, all these things, they may just make their lives just so much different than ours, and it makes their reality way different than ours, if that makes sense, right? Like it literally makes their reality different. And I want to say a quote here from Walt Whitman because I thought it's so short and simple, but yet so powerful. And it says, be curious, not judgmental. Be curious, not judgmental. So curiosity kind of opens us up to try to understand the other person, right? And from there, compassion. And from there, extend that loving kindness that we can have in our heart and that we can share, because ultimately their suffering is also our suffering. So I kind of wanted to share 4 simple steps to be able to like let go of this judgment whenever it arises. And the first one is awareness, right? Becoming aware that you're passing judgment. And once you're aware, you have the power and the choice to stop it. And maybe in that moment, you just need to take a few deep breaths, depending on what the other person has done, right? Maybe you just need to take a few deep breaths to just kind of calm down your nervous system. And then you can process your feelings from there, like what feelings are arising in that moment as you feel judgmental. And then just acknowledging that the feeling is there, maybe feeling it fully so it allows it to pass through you. And then you can even ask the feeling, like, what are you trying to show me in this moment? Because usually feelings are trying to show us something that's important to us, right? And I find that this is like the first step in being curious, right? We're curious about what's going on in our internal world before we even react to anything, right? Just kind of be curious, what's going on inside of me? And I find that the best way to process your thoughts, or even if you're being judgmental and having judgmental feelings, is to actually write them down, to journal about it, because journaling and writing them down is a lot more powerful than just trying to process the feelings in your mind or like just in your head. And then the second step is to practice compassion, right? Like we said, whether you know this person or not, you can be curious again, and you can just kind of try to put yourself in their shoes, right? Try to imagine what their life history or their background has been like. Maybe you can try to imagine the current circumstances that they might be in, or the current circumstances that have led them to act in that way that they're acting that you might not agree with. So compassion. And number 3 is to accept, right? To accept people for who they are, right? Accept that their circumstances and their life journey is different than yours, that they may be at another certain point in their life journey. Accept that they're on their own path, right? You have your path, they have theirs, and it might be totally different from yours. And then just wanting them to be different or wanting them to change just ultimately leads to frustration, right? Because we can't control others. All we can control is our own internal world. And always remember to ask yourself before, because sometimes you might need to express yourself to this person or your feelings, but you can do that with a loving kindness, right? Whenever you feel the need to, that you need to communicate with that person that is doing something that you don't agree with. But always remember, if you do decide to speak, to ask yourself the 3 important questions, right? Is this true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? Right? And from there, you can choose how to best communicate with this person in the most loving way. And then the next step is to appreciate them for showing you something that's important to you in your life, maybe something that might need attention, and thank them for this. And also thank them for giving you the opportunity to exercise your mindfulness muscles, to exercise your compassion and your loving kindness, because the more we practice these tools, just the better we are at reacting towards things, and the better we can become at it, and the more peace and calm we can still have in our hearts, regardless of what happens and what other people do. And then the 5th step is loving kindness. Practice loving kindness towards this person, whether it's someone that you know or it's a complete stranger. love is always the answer, right? Love is going to have a positive effect on you and on the other person. So it's going to positively affect both of you. And just that love in your heart always has the power to bring you back to peace within, right? So appreciation, gratitude, and loving kindness are all just powerful ways and positive emotions that can help shift into positivity around this person that maybe we don't agree with, or a situation that we don't agree with, or maybe is even negative. We can kind of shift it back into positivity using appreciation, gratitude, and loving kindness. And another point that I want to make is that if we can see ourselves as just one big human family and see ourselves as just fellow humans, brothers and sisters who we ultimately want the same things, right? And we suffer from the same things. And in this way, we can kind of bring about what connects us, right? Rather than what separates us. And just like you, this person or these people that sometimes you feel frustrated with or find yourself being judgmental, just like you, they too are human. They make mistakes sometimes. Nobody's perfect. And just knowing that we're each on our own path in life, right? To enlightenment or to become our higher self or our best self. Just knowing this, everybody's on their own path is also, I find, helpful. So just to recap, the 4 or 5 steps to be less judgmental is 1, become aware that you're being judgmental, right? Those judgmental thoughts, and just take a moment to process them, even if you need a few, moments to breathe deeply as well. The second is to practice compassion. Just try to put yourself in their shoes and understand a little bit where they're coming from. The third step is to accept. Just accept others as they are. Trying to change them or the situation is just going to lead into frustration for you. The fourth is to appreciate and thank them, right? Create positivity around them and the situation, because ultimately there's always something to be grateful for. There's always a plus. There's always a positive in anything. And the fifth step is to practice loving kindness, the most important one. Practice loving kindness towards them, but also towards yourself, right? Because sometimes when we have these ill feelings or feel judgmental, we don't feel good about ourselves either, because we don't want to have these feelings. So practice loving kindness towards yourself as well. And when you do practice loving kindness, this just always will bring you back to calm in your heart and peace within. So save this video as a reminder for whenever you're feeling like you're passing judgment and you want to be less judgmental, and you can come back to it so you can start to feel that peace and calm in your heart again. And share this video too if you know of someone that it can benefit from, and you can spread the love that way. And if you have any questions that you want answered, just like this one, or any special requests at all, you can submit them to the link provided below, or it's also on my Instagram profile link. So my Instagram is at Meli_Gill. And every weekend I share yoga and conscious living resources for free. And they're all geared towards helping you live your best life, because I know that in sharing these resources, I know that together we can help shape the world that we want for our children and generations to come. And I know it's a more kind and loving world. Thanks so much for being here. Subscribe if you haven't also. And yeah, sending you lots of love from my heart to yours. Bye. See you next week.